아래 당도 나중에 저기 최 년바다 시바다 년기 의원에 군노들이야 당번에 군노들 하고 싶고 그래서 나지 제라말 대바다 되네 최 냠는제 제일 된바 되냐기 된바 되네 냠는 대하는 지게 랑기 라신이기 녀모비기 녀모바디기 봐 세야기 된다냐 다 돌아나가 저기 지게 샘제 탐지도 상유고번 도비치도 인생배 삼 군노되는 시시 내야다 최시행 원에내야 안들이야 펜바직 펜베삼을 군내라 시어거래마도 안두시는 시어거래스 대마시바제 안은 군노리야 지게 년자 천 년자다 안지 년군学的那个原来什么单位那的这个嘛的是的那些年轻人的写给我的当不工作的要过的是这都是的嘛是的那个就给予就咱们人这个人把吃上干的是呢那给予新人去的了的呢你人结果的是辛苦的其实的呢是给予新人的也这么修的是那个就咱们人这个早的给予新人的是这些学会我说아니 되네 거시에제 지난 기회 신인 땜바이나 소설에 편여다 이게 좀 저여를 기회 신인 땜바이나 하늘랑이야 아니 균 단경을 그래야지 안디 디고랑 디쇼에 되네 쉬루와
Good afternoon. This morning we first concluded the previous chapter in which we looked at how to receive teachings and how to give teachings. And the most important aspects in that presentation was the motivation. So the motivation of the one receiving the teaching should be to have a deep faith or trust in the teacher, as well as a deep wish to practice the Dharma, wanting to eliminate their afflictions and cultivate the varying mental paths that lead to enlightenment. And from the perspective of the teacher, for them too the motivation is crucial. And their motivation should be free of any self-interest, but be focused on being of benefit to others. And thereafter we came to the next chapter, the start of the main body of the text, which presents that in order to be able to develop the spiritual paths in one's mind that lead to the attainment of enlightenment, it's indispensable that one relies on a skilled teacher. And this chapter has a number of outlines, starting with the characteristics of the teacher, then the characteristics of the student, how to rely on the teacher in both thought and behavior, and the benefits of relying, the faults of not relying. And then finally the summary presentation. So this is where we came up to this morning.
지게 개위신 대라지단다 잡아서수기 내중나 시베 개위신 망보르다 디링아 저 개위신 요거셔야디 기부숨기 람이림베 냠레 림바직 간사직 파 당보 기부 중요 람이림바 랍 되는 마진의 기부 딩게 람이림바 랍 되네진 태바 쳔베게 기부 쳔베 람이림바 랍 되네게 티겐게 개위신인데 개위신인 디고르마 개위신인들 천이다 대와 천이가네시 계셔가네시 고르스네 계시되는 고르에서데 어디 걸마셔야 되가 레서로다.
And in the start of this chapter, we saw how there are various different types of spiritual teachers, but the one our text will be presenting here is the characteristics of a teacher who will lead students to cultivate the minds of the Mahayana within them, the minds that lead to the attainment of full and complete enlightenment. And to do so, it's referring to a spiritual teacher who will guide students to cultivate the trainings in accordance with the beings of the three varying capacities, initial, intermediate, and supreme.
되대견래에서 지선다 생이데 신윤두어시와 녀시와 윤대라바 존지 룽규축 대니랍도 또바 마케팅 제외 단유 교와 방라 된 도시는 되리겠는 데 송와래제 시 신인 최주된 덴바식라 로미 띵고버 송소서.
So in the published book, we're on page 32. And as we saw here, in both sutras and commentaries to the sutras, the qualities of varying teachers are presented. So here the source material is from Maitreya, and the text is the ornament for the Mahayana Sutras, in which it states that students must rely on a spiritual teacher endowed with 10 qualities. And in the quotation, a spiritual teacher with discipline, calm, complete peace, superior qualities, diligent, rich in scriptures, who has understood suchness, is eloquent, loving, and never disheartened. On that one rely.
Denegi Kivosumya Lamgirimbe, Nyamlin Den Tugan Kivishin de la Kichu Mason Jugores, Jusangores, Sungorda. That is Shin so that Kivishin Kivo Sumya Lamgirimbe, Nyamlin Den Tugan Kivishin yes, Shin yesad. Denegi Kivishin de la Kijo Carrioson, Dua, said Rangi Sim Guduas Kugores, just Duas. The Dua Lavu Garsorsona. Rangi duo labdu rangi sim nyomo be choso pa songa de pa ga jene pa ga ne rangi sim ge yu cho song to gyurtuba de la sim duo la go wa duo se ki chi chi de.
These are the 10 characteristics for a teacher who is qualified, who's perfectly qualified to lead students, to guide students, to cultivate the paths of the 3 types of practitioners, those of initial, intermediate, and supreme capacity. So amongst these 10, the first is disciplined. So just as the translator to say this translation here in the paragraphs below of discipline, it's a common way to translate it, but it can be, as you'll see in the explanation, it refers to being ethical. And it can also be translated to a disciplined mind is a tamed mind or a subdued mind. So, and you'll see later when it talks about taming wild horses, the word there, tame, is the word that above that has been translated as disciplined. So just to give you a flavor of what is meant, because discipline, I think, has other connotations which don't apply. Anyway, now to come to Geshe's commentary. So the first quality, that of discipline, what it means is a disciplined mind or a tamed mind. It is a mind that is restrained from the side of the afflictions, and rather, therefore, is focused on the sides of virtue. So in other words, a class of minds that are afflicted, the mind has been tamed or subdued so that it restrains itself from being influenced by the afflictions, but rather, therefore, is solely virtuous. So this is the meaning of a tamed mind or a subdued mind, an ethical mind, a disciplined mind.
Sem dua da sem madua sem madua sem dua sero. Sem madua la dengan juga shenlia cewe samba shenlia nebe samba shenlia chadoje samba. Dende samba de sem madua ro da sem madua. 지난 데레 셈마도 아래시 제가 데네게 삼로 디쇼가 셰바나지 데네게 삼로 주요바는 니기 안에 류기원에 샬리에 녀바다 채와서면 류마도 와서 류 녀바지야다 안에 나요관에 샬리에 녀바다 채와서 지고로 와 진짜 셈마도 와 진짜 셈두어 라요다 데네게 샬리에 녀베 삼바다 채외 삼바다 안지 샬리에 추숙시에게 삼바 셴게 제라고 구모구르게 삼바 셴 고고타에게 삼바 데니게 삼모디게 파가체네 데니게 셴랴 녀바다 채와다 자와데 지기 매선베 삼로 요바나 셈두아서 월데 제자 두아서야지 기회신질라 데니시 고구리에서 데니 키제 데니시 요고래서 룽아 이스음 거네 샬라 녀바 지기 매선베게 어두시네 삼로 다당에 고구리에서 두아서 제자도 추림이 라바시 월데네.
What is the difference then between a tamed mind and an untamed mind? So when thoughts arise and abide of wanting harm to come to others, or wanting to speak harshly to others, or criticizing others, or perhaps to take advantage of others. And this way of thinking then is coming from an untamed mind. And such an untamed mind then, or unsubdued mind, will influence the way that we interact with others, how we speak to them, how we physically interact with others. So all forms of, for example, conflict, physical or verbal conflict, comes from a mind that is not tamed. On the other hand, a mind that is tamed, that is ethical, will have abandoned even the wish to speak harshly to others, to lie to others, to deceive others, to engage in others to engage with others in a manner that's harmful. So that would be an ethical mind or a tamed mind. So this characteristic of the teacher of disciplined, it refers to of the three higher trainings. It refers to the training in ethics.
Andu wa da Xixin Sedu, Dan Xixin Sedu, Sem Dinging Laba de Sungore, Carson, Sem Xixin Sedu, Carson, Sem Namian Chol, Pa Danje, Sem number, Yomoji is Chol, Pa Danje, Namian Shi, Shene, then you teach you Nebala and Barshejwada, Jizada, Manju Gomra Kavna, usually teach you to Nebala. Bashegasan Sim Chicho de Chicho de Jizaniki Chicho de Gajin, Patsichu, Nebigi, Dingins in the Gugores, that she knew Jubach Gugores or that Dingins in Labanyamla, she named Tobach Gugores or that Jizan de Shishin said, Dingins in Sem Chu Trevi number Trevi, Namedi, Pachasan, Gajin, Trevi number de God, you let Zidu need to get Dingins in the Gugores or Shishin said, Dingins in Labadies or.
The second of the 10 qualities is that of being calm. So here, what the word calm or peaceful, what it particularly refers to is a mind that has overcome distraction and overcome a distraction through being single-pointed. So it's not a mind such as we have now that is wavering and distracted and moving from one object to another in an uncontrolled manner, but it's rather a mind that is single-pointed and concentrated. So of the three higher trainings, this refers to training in concentration.
The Nyawar Shiva said the Sheragilaba, this or Lenny number Chibigeta, Kiwi Yamlen Chebala, Dijena, and the Pando Yoba, Div Majevana, and Dijebana, Niki Ungor said, the Niki Lenny number Chibi, shut up, that they Sheragilaba, the nation. Lenny number Chibi, shut up, so Sheragilaba, Leba, Dijena, Yagure, Sahawat, Dijena, and the Gyungur said, Yawa number Chetukin, shut up, Lenny number Chibi, shut up. And the Niki, that Sheragilaba, Dela, Sheragilaba, the Niki, shut up Naloya, that Chiki. Dingy, she need to be a D in our name, and you la Jedo Gitabe, and Xinjiang Davis in Sheriff Delada, Latong said, the Niki, Latong, Sheriff Gelaba said, on Sungorwa, the Nezad, the Nyawa Shiva said.
The third quality, that of complete peace, or translated in the Lamrim Chemo as thoroughly pacified. This refers to the quality of meditative insight or special insight, which comes about in dependence on the prior training and concentration. So this refers then to the higher training in wisdom, where the mind is skillful in being able to ascertain faulty approaches and or differentiate between faulty approaches and beneficial approaches. So this is referring to the higher training in wisdom and is characterized by the attainment of meditative insight.
Dondala, Dangajele Disum Digi, that gave it the Nigel Lamrim Yamlinji, Balabdi Lakin gave it Shin Delia, Kechu, and then Suding Laba, Dingizing Lava, Sherry Laba, Labasumi Yamlin Yovachkori, as or that. Digo Garsene, many consul Duja, Ma Chigodu, Sosoya, the Nigel Labasumi Yamlin Mena, Shalati to go Marva. Just that the Neza Shalapashe, Labasum Yamlin Jejubala, Sosolia, the Yamlin Yovachkori, Labasum Yamlin Chikori, as the Nalada, Kishu Sum Labasum Yamlin Kori, as or.
In brief, then, these first three characteristics refer to the three higher trainings, the higher training in ethics, in concentration, and wisdom. These, to be able to be as a qualified teacher, ideally it's indispensable one should be knowledgeable, but ideally one should not just have mere knowledge, but have integrated that knowledge within oneself and have attained realization of that topic. And thereby one will be able to skillfully guide others in cultivating those similar qualities themselves. So again, these first three qualities for the teacher refer to the three higher trainings in ethics, concentration, and wisdom.
Gewi shin de la ane rabjue yongore ane kimba yongorwa jeju semba ane pape gansa kimba yongsubra de jesan de ne ge labasum nyamnesi de duwa se de inji miji rabjung ge duwi shung na she duwi shung de lo khaya ngaba yo mare jesan de duwi shung se de duwa se de meni jesan rabjul ma sonshebel je labje sonshebel kyanya chagorwa de di ane kimba ya nyamne ji goya se yo marwa jesan de duwa se de sem duwa sem nyomo be choso tai ba ga chen sem gewe choso tang to ba go le sem duwa lo go le ji da de du lung na she ba de yu sem duwa re de ina de ya ji da rab jun rab de jun an bi an ji ge di ji wo le de ne shen de ji ge ma se ba ji ge do ta jian ya mang di sung go ba ji da de duwa se de le ji bu mo go wa che di duwa na la cha sa yong go wa ina zo da 지단의 거 송주도 셈도 셈 요모be sho songa de paga je sem gewe sho songa nyamne je tuwene sem duare je sem gewe sho tamodo sem gidina de yomobe sho nya ro tuwene duyo bane sem duyo mare je sa sosuge nyamne je sem yomo sho so da ga gewe sho so tang tuyo bane sem duwa sa je gogo de
These three higher trainings are developed by both those who are ordained and non-ordained, in that, and moreover, and this is the same as there are bodhisattvas who are ordained and non-ordained. So therefore, these three higher trainings can and are developed by both the ordained and the non-ordained. But to talk further on this first quality, that of discipline, or tamed, or subdued, or ethical, it's also the same word where we use the Sanskrit for Vinaya. And so Vinaya this is used in either as a general collection of the Buddha's sutras, or in terms of the monastic code or monastic discipline. So this is the same word in the Sanskrit, it's Vinaya. So that's the same word that is used here as discipline. So if within the context of the higher training in ethics or higher training in discipline, if one is to the teacher is to guide in the monastic code, that aspect of the Vinaya, then that person would need to be ordained. But here it refers to a broader approach, where the mind needs to be subdued in terms of subdued from the influence of the afflictions. So in other words, I need to be well trained in ethics, in ethical restraint, where the mind is restrained from coming under the influence of the afflictions. And such a mind is a tamed mind. And that is what is being referred to here.
하반 직바이나 라고야세요 말와 맨일로세 로마데다 기인을 연된 직바로 집에 신이어 검이하고 그러네 고요 신이어 검 신경도 신이어 주디바이는 맨이 신이어 검 나고 하시나 네 연den을 학벌사 계스가요 말 제가 하봐요 제가 내게 강라비에게 강기 거시베네 메이 로마딜레 안 소수기 데니기를 연된 하와지고 그리에선 하와메나 안에 콜야 연된 사발라비아 체고 말에서 제가 And the
fourth characteristic is that of superior qualities. This refers to that the teacher should have qualities that surpass those of the student. As we'll see later, students require qualities as well, but the teacher should have qualities that surpass those of the students. Otherwise, how can they guide the students? So, for example, if the student wishes to cultivate calm abiding, but the teacher hasn't cultivated calm abiding, the teacher will not be an ideal guide to guide the students in the cultivation of calm abiding, because the teacher themselves has yet to achieve it. So that's the fourth quality, superior qualities. And the fifth is diligent or energetic. So this is the fifth quality required. So there's fifth quality we have here is diligence. Normally we know this word as joyous perseverance. So it's the same word, just abbreviated here. So the translation we have is diligent, or the Lamrim Chemo that's translated as energetic. And it's the normal word that we have for joyous perseverance. Now the sixth quality, rich in scriptures, this refers to a wealth in scriptural knowledge. So the teacher should have a characteristic of being highly learned.
Dinyi rabdu toba sida da dini tongpa ni toba chi kukuri eche dinyi rabdu toba dinyi sede tongpa ni dini rabdu toba sida tongpa ni ki duen toba chi kukuri eche karasa ne tepa chimbi ki chue nyamne sida karasore kibu jingye lam nyamne sheba da tepa chimbi lam nyamne sida tongpa ni kwa sung kukuri wa chesa dini za tongpa ni toba chi kukuri eche.
The seventh quality, who has understood suchness. So suchness is a synonym for emptiness. So therefore a characteristic required for the spiritual teacher is that they should have a realization or understanding of emptiness, because this is a list of 10 characteristics for a teacher of the Mahayana Dharma, and a central component of the Mahayana teachings are those on emptiness. So therefore, the teacher should have an understanding of emptiness.
And
the eighth quality is they should be eloquent in how they present the Dharma, so skilled in instructing, a skillful teacher.
That's a big Dani said, Dani Job said, Dani said that Jamba than Zewachko, Shanlia, Shema, Dujema, Shedelia, Zewachko, Zewako, said.
The ninth quality of loving. So here the teacher should have the quality of love and compassion in relation to others.
That Joa Bangla, Joa Bangla said, Anjik Chud, Yane, Yando, Shigadu. Kabli Kalia Kara Tineke that Jingu de Subinyam Yakuri, Sevakuri, Sesan Kyoapans and Machu, Shelia, Kanga Yore Yane, should the Diniki, Kanga Yobana, Suba de Kom to Achkore, Subinyam Kore,
And the 10th characteristic is to never be disheartened or to abandon dispiritedness. So here, when either the same point or the same topic has been taught again and again, perhaps trying from different angles and so forth, the teacher should never become disheartened or dispirited. In other words, the teacher needs to be have cultivated patience in terms of dealing with hardships.
Nikibusumia Lamirimbe, Yamlenting and Givi Shin della, Chudan Demba Shukola, Shigla, Denishkure, Cesar Lomegi, Denigi Givi Shin, Juda Demba Tim Gugure, and Dusine, Dodican and Dinisuma Rege, let me think Guber Son so awesome.
So these are the 10 characteristics that a teacher, ideally, of the teacher of the Mahayana should ideally be endowed with, and such a teacher students should rely upon.
아니 지난 저기 나데 소야디게 로메게 라마테 로마디게 야 아니 지게 람 냠네 림바지비게 라마테 된 라메게마 로마딜레 최시고도 라마딜레 규제 되는 때마치 고그리에서 숨어와 로메게 라마테 람 냠네 림바지 로메게 라마테 되네 라마테도 라마디게마 최시비 갑라 되네 라마딜레 규제 되는 때마치 고그리에서 제 로메게 라마테 라메게 단 로마딜레야 제수 송네 마 최시디 아니 최시비 라마딜라 아니 규제 되는 때마치 고그리에서 숨어와.
So these are the ideal qualities that a teacher should have, a teacher of the Mahayana, for them to be suitable for a student to rely on them. So therefore, if one has the wish to benefit beings through guiding them in the stages of the path to enlightenment, these are the characteristics one should be looking to develop within oneself.
저기 최초의 수도 아니가 저기 시윤자야게 된다리아 파수진 니소하고 해야당 신야게 된다리아 다진에게 라마다 로미게 대화 멤버네 저기 최초의 수도 양지기 마취기 파 롭정 제야다 되네 용으로와 말에 수인나세나다 지단행아도 최시에를 되는 용구로 와제 라멜로메게 만매제 최적의 수도 최시에를 용구로 와제네.
Moreover, in general, when one receives an explanation of a Dharma topic, one doesn't necessarily have to have a teacher-student relationship with that person, but rather have a relationship of being their Dharma friend. So one has as a Dharma friend, someone who understands the topic and is presenting it to you. So therefore, it's not that from whomever one receives a Dharma teaching, one necessarily has a teacher-student relationship.
디네자다 델야 델로미게 라마테 라미기 최셰 디니게 냠는 제발라 아니 최주다 된바지 고고레스 대양에서 고베다 제름체 송고레 대양 랑 마두베 셴두와 네메버 송베 시데 제사 라니기 냠는 제 랑기 유셈 규 두메나 셴랴 셴네 셴기 셈규 두 투에데 갈레 하고레스 제사 네메바 디니기 네메버 송베 디니 갈레하보레에서 올.
Now, Lama Tsongkhapa starts to comment on these 10 characteristics, starting with the first, that of discipline. Furthermore, it says that someone who lacks self-discipline is not in a position to discipline someone else. So here, what he's saying is that if a teacher has not given rise to a quality within them, it's difficult to guide others to develop that same quality within them. So if a teacher's mind is not tamed or subdued, it will be difficult for them to guide as successfully as students to subdue their own mind.
제가 랑기스 담보 랑이 셈 마도와 아니 셴리아 셰베네 셴이 셈 두투고 말레스 데네자 셴 두비게 라만디 토마 랑기 규두와 시괴소 세도제자 셴리아 파 셰제 셴기 동화세야단 디유르의 셈 규두와라 셈 규두시드 셈 미기외초 녀모버초 통화의 파까지 개위초소지 추용 투야라 유알라 아니 당보 라마코 라니기 셈 두어지고 토마 랑규기 랑규 두어지고 있어서 토마 라마 소소 랑랑기 유기 셈규 두어지고 그래 셈 묘모 쳐서 마땅하지 셈 개위 쳐서 땅 두어지고 그래서 디메나 아니 셴레 바시신 셴기 셈규 두어야 될 갈래 하버려서
Lama Tsongkhapa continues. Therefore, a guru who disciplines others must be someone who has first disciplined his or her own mind. So this is quite clear. The meaning is that one cannot merely have an intellectual understanding of ethics, or an intellectual understanding of what a tamed mind is, or how to tame the mind. One needs to have actually done it oneself in order to successfully guide others to tame their own minds. And again, the meaning of having a tamed mind or an ethical mind is a mind that is restrained from coming under the influence of the afflictions. So one's mind is not on the side of the afflictions, but rather on the side of virtue.
Lama di chujimgi nyamle me di shuwe sheba ne kulon lia ane jige sosuge tam nyanda nyingu yoyagi denten samda je shwe du rangi sem judu yo marwada jisna denigi sosuge samlo di shanlia cewa cewe sambada shanla nebe sam shangi go hota yage samba chweba ne san yu mudu warwa jisna denigi samlo thone jige yode je shanlia chwe sheba ne ane shangi samlo yago tatuye gyura tatuye kale khabu chagurwa dine za dine chire da gajele sosugi jige machine bayne jisheba jene pajo de pando yago yong tu marwa dine za to sosugi chujim nyamle yoba 지산 류가 유스 예죄된 비 출임 소야 소수게 소야 예대 봐 소아 주에 봐제 한마 지한래 시에제 시월마 소수게 류가 유스 예죄된 비 출임 봐 소아제 소소랑게 류가 유스 예죄 가르 투도제 아 샬래 지겨 말을람나 네 봐줘되기 아니 냐로 심마로 깔래 하보라 코로 난줄이야 샤할 코로 지지면서 가다야게 냐여 봐다 진짜 니네 인자 두시네 셴기 샬래 판도야 부투 말해서 그러다.
This ties in closely with what we looked at this morning in the conclusion of the former chapter, which is that it's imperative that for someone teaching the Dharma, they have a motivation of sincerely wanting to benefit others, having an attitude of love and kindness towards others, and having a motivation that is free from wishing for fame and a great reputation and material gain. So if someone's mind is not subdued or is not ethical, then it is much more likely that their mind will be motivated by receiving something in return for their teachings, whether material gain or praise or reputation. Whereas a person who has subdued their mind, whose mind is restrained from being influenced by their afflictions, for them it will be much easier to have a genuine motivation of loving kindness. So this is how this first quality or this first characteristic ties into what we looked at this morning. And moreover, in order to be able to guide someone in a particular quality, in the development of a particular quality, one needs to do so from a basis of knowledge or experience based on knowledge of that topic. So in the context of that of ethics or self-discipline, one needs to have experience of the higher training in ethics. If one does do so, or one does have so, one's mind will be restrained from being under the influence of the afflictions. And this will be reflected in one's physical interactions with others, one's behavior, as well as one's speech. So therefore, the teacher will have behavior and speech that is not, that's clearly not motivated by afflictions. And therefore, it will be clear that their mind has been subdued or their mind is ethical. If this is not the case, and they're speaking or acting in a way that is clearly motivated by afflictions, how are they going to skillfully guide others in subduing their own mind, in cultivating an ethical mind, when they themselves are not yet ethical, when they themselves are not yet restrained from being under the influence of their afflictions?
Ninma ona ane jida dulo shi kwe nyamna ta sem dugo rangi sem dugo guri eserwada sosugi lama di sem dambo shenle shebala sosugi sem dugo guri larwada anda sem dugo na da sem dugo anis dugo re eso duwa shi guri eso ona jida duwa shi kwe nyamna gang junjungi juba jene tobe yunde ming takpa re gyula yebe mibembe ngewe tenpa jidang 튠비기 유 둘루시 고에데스 데니 라바림보체 숨도 녜베 두와라 소바 숨 sung so san.
And the text then continues. You may wonder, well then, how should one discipline it? It is of no benefit to have done just any practice and then label it as an excellent quality of realization within your mind stream. This is why you need a system for disciplining the mind that accords with the general teaching of the victors. That has been ascertained as the three precious trainings, and therefore ethics, concentration, and wisdom have been set forth.
데 간에시 고그레스는다 강한 중중기 주버 제네스다 그냥 지당은 저기 냠는 제라 당보 디지 니바 디지 숨바 디지 고 냠는 게 림바로 쓰면 방람 제레가이나 가는 지어로 받아고 장당 림바 지어로 봐 디니기 당보 디지라고 니바 디네 숨바 디네 장고래서야다 디니기 뇨모바 디네치디 니바 디네시 땡고래 두시 디네 땡고래서 림바지 디네시 네 고고와 디네 메바자 강한 중중에서 소소기 직제제디와 되었지 저기 셈레 태바전 오당에 또바 휴게소 선배 삼게디 니 팽이 말해서 가주진 주버제네 소소 직 반응 가는 거림다데 가에 매바제 소소기 직제 되네 디와바 되었지 그래도 또베연된 민루 따내서 아당아 또바 계속서 병하데 또고여서 민루 따내 되네 귤라 예배 되네게 또바 귤라 때 예바디게 팽마레 미팽베 되네 팽마레 저래
You may wonder, well then, how should one tame one's mind? So the way of training the mind is set out very clearly in the teachings, in that there's a particular sequence of trainings to engage in. And this is similar to most things that we do in our life. Most things that we do, there is a set sequence that one engages in so as to get the desired result. So here we need to be aware of this, in that it is of no benefit to have done just any practice and then label it as an excellent quality of realization within your mind stream. In other words, if one hears a teaching and has some understanding and is doing some meditation, and you're feeling something arise in your mind, and then getting overly excited about your great realization, this is a mistake. Here you already are going down a wrong path. One needs more knowledge and more experience to recognize where one is in one's spiritual development, and not get overly excited, overly carried away at the sign of some small progress.
튠비기 유두루시 고에데스 게웨 템바치스트 산지기 송셰비기 지당네 고 냠는지기 림바드파 송셰바 산지 송셰베 데다 튠바시 고고레스 데다 튠바 디난신지 냠는지는 유두와시 고고레제레 제자베네 산지기 게와치마 라다 기부 베네 충유람 이림바 냠는지라 게와치마 라다 미유고 바토벨라 삼나디네데네 당고레사다 내가 저기 기부 증기 탈바토발에 당보 되는 이바 되는 도시 냠는 제고래 세대 도시네 계획이 상예기 손셰비기 되네질야네 저 튠바치 고그래 지당 튠비게 규둘룩 냠는 제다 규둘룩 냠는 제다지 되는 거래스 디가레라네 디니 라바숨 가서 디네 라바림보죠 숨도 녜베스 제산 계획이 산지기 순제베 냠는 림바데가레스네 라바 가서 라바숨기냐 림바데레서 수팅이 라바팅이징라 시라기 라바 냠는 림바 디숨도 녜바레 디숨 나네다 냠는 림바 차산 디나 듀르고레스 디숨도 녜바레스 제산 수팅이 라바다 팅이징 라바 시라기 라베 냠는데 고야디 디레서
The text continues, this is why you need a system for disciplining the mind that accords with the general teachings of the victor. Therefore, the meaning here is that the way that you engage in training your mind should be in accordance with the Buddha Dharma. It shouldn't be your own reimagining of the teachings, something that you're altering to suit yourself. This is mistaken. So, for example, when you're guiding others and you're wanting to teach them how to cultivate the causes to attain a good rebirth, The text set out very clearly what are the causes and how to cultivate them. And likewise, if you're guiding others in how to attain liberation from samsara, the text set out precisely which are the trainings to engage in and what is their sequence. So this is something, a proven method that has worked for countless beings. And this is what one should replicate, not try and make something up oneself. And then it continues. That has been ascertained as the three precious trainings. So the three precious trainings, or the three higher trainings, is the unmistaken method by which beings will cultivate their mind and attain liberation. And therefore, ethics, concentration, and wisdom have been set forth. So those are the three higher trainings, that of ethics, concentration, and wisdom.
Duwa lo sopa sum sum so se de ji de yan la duwa shiwa nya shiwa sa je duwa lo sopa sum di de sum ba re che sa la ba sum nyam ne di san ye gi sun shi gi wi tem ba ji da tim bi gu du lu di ka ne nyam ne che wa dang bo churi la ba nyam ne je de ne ding yi la ba nyam ne de ne she ra yi la ba nyam ne di sum ba de rim ba shin du shin je ku re de ne yin za de ji de gen na la ya duwa lo sopa sum sum so se duwa shiwa nyer shiwa sen du shin sum ba re che re duwa la sopa sum sum so se re.
So, and then as the paragraph concludes, and therefore the three higher trainings of ethics, concentration, and wisdom have been set forth.
And nala manjugi shine duin said chudun yele be nyamlen gune maje baje nyamlen gune deliam nyamlen maje baje shine duin said ne duyagi kale haworoshi jesa je shine dubala tambo 시설라 마소는 주rin 냠는 주rin에 레베 냠는지 데네 디에데 신에 주고 오래지려 지나데 신에 마주바체 안능이 하동 주기서 고면에 하동 주야 용 말에 제가 당보 신에 주 신에 디 안에 하동 주고 오래 제가 주rin에 라바 시시에 데네 딩이 라바 주 데네 딩이 라베 주네 데네 샤라게 라바 냠네 주rin에 라바 누가서 냠네 제발 고고래 지금 거기 그 흉기 저타 되었지 마도 당번 당한 저기 수진 라바다 시락 라바다 배 약쇼를 저장이 디냠는 제세긴서 현다되게 파 통자 샤셔데 야가디 지긴스 디냠는 제 지게 바 자도 제대로는 디 냠는데 줍투고 주야 깔래 하버려서 그래.
And here we have the three higher trainings presented in their correct sequence. And this, whilst it's stated explicitly in the text, the meaning is important in that we've been hearing how the texts present the specific sequence in which to train your mind. And these higher trainings are presented in a specific teaching. The foundation is ethics, upon which concentration can be attained and upon which wisdom can be attained. So this sequence is definite. If someone looks at these teachings and thinks, oh, I'd love to have single points of concentration, to have a mind that is not distracted and focused, and one sets out to achieve concentration without the foundation of ethics, it will not come about. Likewise, if one sees that wisdom is the highest training, that's the one I want, without having the prior attainment of calm abiding, meditative insight cannot be attained. So therefore, one needs to both understand the correct sequence of trainings and why they're in that sequence, and then train in that way. If one does not, the desired results cannot be attained.
기부스미 람림베 냠랭이 림바 다 치겐 기회 시엔데라 되니시고 그래서 다딘마 양지게 대두이긴 지게 두아세데 강하니 두아라 소바 숨 두아세데 두아니 추중이 라바데 시산 강게다 두아냐와 녀시와세 두아세데 가르르고 추중이 라발라 고그리에세 추중이 라바데 에사데 지공래.
The text continues. So we have here in our translation the Pratimoksha Sutra. So the Tibetan literally says the Vinaya. So within the Vinaya one would find the Pratimoksha Sutra, and that's probably where this is found. But just to show that where this quotation comes from is the Vinaya, which is the same word as has been translated here as discipline. So just to show that the relationship between this terminology.
Adiji Dinma Kichu Judida, Dinma relation about the Shekaguru, the Jingi Tordu Shusar, that Dinma Zidan Basin and Duce, Turing Labas, Turing Labal Gugures. Yeah, and so Tarbale, that Susripe Donalia, Dinasun Yores, or that Susripe Donalia. Daudo Bebe, Dawai, Semda Kalan Gawala, Tumbi Zernan Dabai, Sabni Sosor Tardi Yin, Shesumba Tarasa.
So in these two paragraphs, Lama Tsongkhapa presented a brief reference to the three higher trainings, which are the first three characteristics the teacher should develop. Now we look at them in a little more detail. So from the Pratimoksha Sutra, in accord with the unruly horse of the mind, always straining to run away, a bridle studded with 100 sharp nails, that is the Pratimoksha vows.
Sosabedonala, Tinisung, Dado Bebe, Dawai, Semda Kalangawala, said Singa, Semde, Danashinta, Damadu, get that Dango, Da Migala Shue, Jala Kie, the Legamagu Gablia, that Dambodela, and the musician by the Yaudrosima who had father, Jala Guinati, Yung Marwa, Jidan Semdi, the Nigit, Manzuki Semdi, Danashin. Da Madu Gapki, Negapki, Sem Nashin, Semdi, Danashin Shri, Tanga do some daddy, some of the Jig some daddy, Lamsa, Jandaji, Rosha, Yungdua, Jisan, Send Pai Yang, Drodura, Jisan, Sem Madua, Sem Namiangal, Fungo, Regi, Sem Da, Kalen Gawala, Sedu Gawares. That Dele, Dubi Gabla, Sem Du, Tumbi, Senan, Taba, Sede Danzuki, Tumbi, Ben. Sagaru, Beding in the charges, Sagas captured Tapshavan, Tembuja, Jardigua, Kagadumarwa, Cezan Tumbi, Senen, Taba, City, that same the Pasuya Lea, Sudimgiti, some words, Midi, Michelia, Nova Chigi me, Lu Naguan, Shanla, Zunshigi me, Nil Lujukan, Shanla, So Chigi me, Shan, Anaka Shan Yukuma me, Sembi, Luma use me, Shanla, Nubig, Java, the niggas our Chigi me, Sembe, Samnodi. Sagana Shinchida, this some not Yoba inna, and Shengi Nebe Chaval tried Paka Gore Ejeda, Tumbi, Sernan, Yabas, Sernan by Yapshabanashi, this soon we send by the Sungu, this soon by na, Sem Pa Shengi, Namian, Gasor Shengi, Chawa, the Shan never Chibis, Chol Soyadi, Gagore Ejeda, that don't that is more.
Our current state of our mind is likened here to a wild horse, in that it is untamed. It just does its own thing. So if one imagines a horse that hasn't been broken in yet, and one tries to put a saddle on it, or tries to load it with goods as a pack animal, it won't accept this at all. It will rebel and run away. This is our current state of mind. And then the verse continues, in accord with the unruly horse of the mind, always straining to run away, a bridle studded with 100 sharp nails, that is the Pratimoksha vows. So another analogy would be ethical restraint. We can liken to nails which keep in place one piece of wood against another. So the role of the nails would be to keep the pieces of wood stable so that there is no movement. A stable mind is what results from the mind becoming tamed or subdued through ethics. So mind that is tamed, we would be experienced as the very sincere and natural wish, I do not want to do that because it will cause harm. I will not talk in this way or act in this way because it will cause harm. So this is how one experiences a tamed mind, a subdued mind, an ethical mind, that even should a particular thought arise or one be faced with the opportunity to engage in a particular behavior, this will be abhorrent to one, and this arises in a way that it's not doing so is completely natural. Doing so feels wrong and unnatural.
나 삽니 소소 탈디 인스라 삽세오래 삽세는 안 저기 다가宣제조도 갈래 다기 마치 자 태주로와 다디 예쇼를 두고는 두 태 되네 조주 되네 유는 되네 태조주 되네 그도런도 기태 제대로 곧 다디 카카오가 디만 태진 빈 다당보 장도로 제주갈래 디지고로 와다 지산 디삽자데 제자다 디네지 대지 튠비 세는 세데 세는 잡아서 소소베 디니기 숭위 셈바디 삽나시리 제자다 마우스 셈디 셴야 꾸마꾸야데 셴야 셴기 롱줄레 녀베제게 삼로레드 디지기메 셈베 삼로디게 가샤제 삽지 지추 카고르제 셈디 디지칸 로주고 말레스 제자 다셴 디니기 숭위 셈바 삼로디기 나주게 셈 셴야 차와도 녀바다 디니기 초초야 차사 디기 가고래 제래 지가고래 지산 삽나시리에서 지산 디기 셈 녀모베 초소 저한테 파 까지네 개위 초소야 주던 거래 지산 삽나시리에서 너나라 룡아 예수 니주 샬라 녀바체베 되는 수위 셈바 니주 수위 돈비 수림디 다 삽나시리 디 수림 지어바이나 셈디 아니 녀모베 초소다 동아기에 초 땅 말에서 디리에서 거다
Similarly, we can utilize the illustration given in the text, a bridle studded with 100 sharp nails, that is the pratimoksha vows. So the horse is the unruly mind, the nails are the mind that has been subdued. So it forces the previously unruly mind to act in accordance with one's training. So just like a horse that has been trained well, it will follow the instructions given to it by means of the reins and the bridle. So too, with a mind that is subdued, that is restrained, it will go in the direction that of one's training. And then even when one is presented with opportunities where one can be unethical, for example, to talk in a harsh manner and so forth, with ease, one will turn away from that because of the quality of the training of one's mind.
안델레 따종 장도 제행기 두행기 배 캐바티기 다 장행 되네 캐바티기 파 정도에 안 삽상보지 배시 당제 안두셔 따디 파 뒤셔 두고 와스 니나신 아주 셈디 배 중요 모발람사직 지기 생기 이제 체외 삼바다 되네 샬레 네바 삼로디 두스 지 조초조라 차려지 담어도 하나지레스 제가 되네 두종 캐바 나신디 룡아이 예주든비 수림디게 송제 수림디제 디게지나 나가 저기 바 송제 바 개위초를 그쯤 두고 그래서 도스네 베디나시리에서 송도
Lama Tsongkhapa then comments on this verse. Someone skilled at breaking in wild horses tames them with a good bridle. So this is the illustration, and then for us as practitioners, the role of ethics is to restrain our mind. So ethical restraint is restraining one's mind from following the afflictions, seeing that the afflictions always deceive one, always delude one, and lead to harm and suffering for oneself and others. As one's knowledge and understanding of this grows, it becomes ever easier to restrain one's mind and keep it in an ethical direction, restraining one's mind from going in the afflicted direction.
제산디니게 딸베샤셰디네 왕부 로비 유기 제수 자와 제디 제수 자와 담무게 따고 그래서 셈디 담무게 나시레스 그래서는 인베지 가르치 베로시디 미고나 인데 왕부 로비 유기 제수 자와 세등아서 왕부 로베서 유단 가소리 뇽모바야 남명 유 되네게 파 초송와스 되네 제수 장루고로 와스 되네자 담 무게 나시레스 민비 금자라지 ene jawa mayin bala juba asir da jawa mayin ba sire da jawa mayin ba sire shen lia pembi ge jawa mayin ba Bene Shengi Jela, Kumakuya, Shengi, and the Soja, and then Shen Nagwen, Shanlia, Tsupshia, and then Denige Semgi Shalia, Jigi, Chado Jada, Shengi, and the Kasur Shen, Mi Tumba, Mitumba Soyagi, Denigi, Jagi, Chamaje, Denige Samloban, Chisan Java Mayimbo Juba, yes. Java Mayimbo Jubana, Sarjing, said the Chesa Denigi, Sudim Suigi, Dukentige, Tabajik, Yakumajin did about Sarjit, Jene, Laguna, Yakuna, Yapuchi, Sugura, Dinashin, Sudim Suigi, Yaman Chebala, Dine, Java Mayimba Soagi, Wambo Rocha, Java Mayimba Soagi Paka, Sarjiko, Java Mayimba Jugna, Sarjing.
Lama Tsongkhapa continues, like wild horses, the senses pursue wrong objects. So this is the case of the untamed mind. It follows whatever arises to the senses, the mind pursues that, either with desire or with repulsion. Ethics subjugate them. So ethics subjugate our mind in terms of how it relates to what arises to the senses. Ethics subjugate them when you're drawn to inappropriate activities and makes you engage with much effort in what ought to be done. So as one is developing an ethical outlook, when objects arise to one's senses and one is either drawn with desire or repelled with disgust, ethics keeps the mind restrained from following those afflictions. And at first, some effort is required. Much effort is required to follow the virtuous path, but with perseverance, then one becomes very skilled at this.
Beba Dume, Javro Webe, Chola, Jubal Chebes, Sutimgi Labes, Simgi, that Tulor Jeba was.
Ethics subjugate them when you are drawn to inappropriate activities and make you engage with much effort in what ought to be done. Someone trained in it has likewise tamed the horse of the mind.
Lunga Gone Shanlia Pembi Javada Gangtu Chedi, Javabadrova, Chesada Beba Chene, but Bezu Cheche Tambo, Samla Yadik, Dushine, Shan, Nube Samba Javachin, Digmaris and Besamta, Dene Shanlia Pemba, the Gangtu Javores and Besamta, Dushin Lungagi Kone, Shanlia Pemba Gangtu Chedia, Bezu Javores, Javabari, Tisucha, Javachin, Tidubaris, Webaladu, Tisujena Rashinikale Pembi Javache. The Mioba Dicena Rasinigal Nube Java Sigurua, Mioba. Chesa, the Nigishan Pemba Java, the Rasinigala, Javachi Weba, Pembarichin, Javabari, Di Chotelia, Bezu Chegores, DJ Sutumi Labares, Chesan Sutumi Labigi, the Genia, and then Dusin and Yamnenche Sutumi Laba, Yamnes Jagon, and the Semki, Daddy, that Naji Semdi, Sem 2 Gores, and give you down to Gore. To a jebo, didn't do, same to Sadi didn't do what he has.
A couple of important points were made here, that with all topics, but we're looking at that here of ethics, in order to transform one's mind, at first it's quite difficult. One needs to apply oneself with effort. As one becomes more skilled, less effort is required because one is becoming ever more habituated to, in this case, an ethical outlook. One is becoming ever more aware of the faults of the afflictions and can therefore, with ever more ease, bring one's mind away from following the afflictions, such as either desire or aversion. But as one also develops knowledge and qualities in other areas of the Dharma, these will impact the prior areas that you have been or are developing. So for example, whilst one is developing an ethical outlook, restraining one's mind from being under the influence of the afflictions, as one is also developing love and compassion, developing an open heart and a tender heart towards others, that topic will also impact on one's ethics. Because at first one's ethics are about, I don't want to be under the influence of the afflictions because of the harm this will cause me. Now, as we're developing a more loving heart, a kinder heart, our ethics will become greatly enhanced because not only do we not want to suffer, but we do not want to bring suffering to others either. And this then, as we develop love and compassion, this aids our development of ethics.
난 주림 일라베 냠내시 주림 세딩한 남윤 제도에 예제 준비 주림 안에 semjen 된지 주림 안에 가서래 예제 준비 주림제 되네 가서 주림이 숨여로 와다 언제자데 저기 다 주림제라 예제 준비 주림세 지금 그래 안에 semjen 된지 주림 세진 거래 어디 예제 준비 주림 semjen 된지 주림 안에 도시네 용거 봐서 제가 되게 주림이 안 되나시 난 주림세 류가 예제 준비 주림 용거래 전주심비기 안 도모서 주림 용거래 안에 아주 나게 냠네 나게 도모서 주림네 용거로 와되네게 제가 되게 주림세데 이제 주림라도 다 좋아라봤으면 주림세데 주림 나려야다 소식에 냠린리 빠베게다 개체쇼 멍보여 되게 작으로와 디네자 제가 디네 돈도 따기 개체쇼데다 디제 당한 쪽에 주림세야디 당한 쪽에 주림 마송와 인자 디 셈디 파르 셈디기 다조한 쪽에 나기 직수 비엔리아 직균주 제단 직수부 제다 직배 독자 제디 나게 하되데 삼모나레메나 군노메나 디데요 말와 공 용구 말와 제가 다 류유권의 전기 잘라 고마고야다 류유권의 샬리아 둥제 예동 따야다 샬리교 소조 제디 류유권의 제바디 담보 삼모나레 미디 지긴세미 군노요 고와 군노메나 디 류유권의 예바데 영아요 말와 제가 디니 인자다 류가기 제바 샬라 네비기 제바 영아디 디숭고고레스 디가고레 디가야 돼야 조 셈네 바가샤바네 디가야 임버와 제가 셈나로 제가 다 삼로나로야 제가 류가 유숨 샹이고네 샬레 체외도 네바자 지금에서베 삼로디 만족이 두스치네 삼다바이네 디데 수름소 알고레 제자디 삼다이데 계시모레 사데 조데 수림이라 베냠네 제타 디숭고르와
So we can understand how our later studies and contemplations serve to impact our earlier studies and contemplations through the illustration of ethics. So in the Mahayana, in the trainings of the Bodhisattva, ethics has three divisions. The first of which is the ethics of restraint due to vows. And the vows are in different categories. There are those of the individual liberation, such as those of non-ordained and ordained practitioners, the vows of bodhisattvas, and tantric vows. So there are three differing sets of vows that as one, at different stages, one will take and try and live in accord with. Then there is an ethics that one engages in whilst practicing virtuous qualities, and an ethics of striving to benefit sentient beings. So there are different gradients of ethical conduct that one develops as one progresses in one's practice. And these then also have an influence on other aspects. So later, when one takes bodhisattva vows, that has an impact on one's general ethical conduct, because now one's determination is to lead others to the path of enlightenment. So therefore, harming them in any way is unimaginable, it's completely contradictory. So this is how, and it's not just the case with ethics, but it's throughout our spiritual development. Our latter studies and reflections impact on what we have been previously reflecting on. And moreover, ethics is the very foundation, or ethical restraint is the very foundation of our spiritual development. Because any harm that we do to others, and any harm that we do which limits our spiritual development, comes about because the mind is not subdued, is not restrained. So for example, when we engage in conflict with others, perhaps a verbal conflict or maybe physical conflict, These instances come from a mind that is not restrained. One's mind is under the influence of the afflictions, and therefore one speaks harshly, therefore one lies, therefore one engages in physical altercations or steals. So these harmful behaviors and speech follow about independence on a motivation, and that motivation is unethical or is not one of ethical restraint.
Dini 당한 저기 주름 소시에데 그도 될 양한 저기 지전에 뇌비 자와 지에게 드니 견삼래도 남사 전투에데 고녀만 곰시면나 저거 전투에 갈라가고 지거와 드니자 당한 저기 주름디 야네 야도 삼곰고래 랍디 당한 저기 야네도 삼당고래 세월다 드니기 야네 야도 삼당 당한 저기 나산디 징한 저 쇼벤 파야 라이디 간다 라네 디 당이 lunga yisumgi shanliya nipi jawa sa zao yin jingmya sanpiki dushine samgaze diniki dang tuya di nga zo yana yandu dushine daya di gechimbo re sa chi di sungurwa jizna di tsurim sunya di jizna da gewa chima hada miyu gobang tubi ludin yabu toya di la gewa lenya gyu di ya tsurim di yin sor bina badan dawa dra peki uma juba nalaya ngondi gyuni tsurim le shan me sa chi ngondi gyuni 추림 레션메 먼저 하다미고 먼저 규 니 아니 가르선 추림 레션바 요 말에서 먼저 규니 추림 레션메 순거 제산 먼저 하다미고 본 규디 추림 소에레스 추림 소에라 디멤베게다 먼저 규디 추림 마소 받은 먼저 규 레투 말에서 용 말에서 제산 먼저 규니 추림 레션메 순거와
So where one recognizes that one readily follows their afflictions, this is just because of habituation to following those afflictions. It's not something innate. It can be changed. To express it differently, where one finds in certain circumstances one struggles to be ethical, one follows the afflictions and perhaps speaks harshly and so forth. This is just due to habituation. So when you recognize that, you know that the situation can be changed by developing a contrary habituation. And the way to do this is to repeatedly, every day, reflect on the benefits of having a mind restrained from being under the influence of the afflictions, in other words, being ethical, and the faults of following the afflictions, and reflect on this again and again every single day. And as one does this over time, as long as one does so repeatedly, then over time, one will become more habituated to seeing that the afflictions always cause harm. And then, when one finds oneself in a circumstance where previously one would have justified perhaps anger, perhaps retaliating in kind, one now will not do so, because now one recognizes that one's afflictions only cause harm, and therefore they are never appropriate. Or when one finds oneself in a situation where you think you can get away with something no one will know, you recognize that it's an affliction that would motivate such a behavior. This is never okay, this is never justified, and therefore one restrains oneself. And this, as one becomes more habituated to this way of thinking, this habituation serves to make it part of who you are, part of your very personality. You become an ethical person. And then it's no longer a case of needing to restrain oneself or be self-disciplined. Just naturally one does not act in certain ways. And as further encouragement, there's a verse from Chandakirti's Entering to the Middle Way, which says that there is no other cause for rebirth as a human or a god than ethical restraint. So this shows that the very foundation, the very smallest goal of the Dharma, good rebirth, comes about independence on ethics.
Negi 당하는 저기 원되기 류하고 신발에 수rim하고 송고래 세상 수rim송하다 수림송세대 삼날에 다야 들어가다 류가 있으면은 차와 녀바 지금에서 배 삼로디 진 여바이나 류가기 저바샤는 녀바 차와 주는 거 말지 수림송고래 제래 다 밀류지 하고 실려바이네야 아즈리아 미다 하다 밀이야 디기 조디 롱주지 매바이나 ane kanga du kanga te longju gu longju yoba na digi jimi hami digi yungu res jesa longju me na ande digi yungu ma res jesa da digi yungu la longju gu da longju gi di ane gyu gare la ne jimba tangwa la dine yungu res ma do jimba ma ta na longju yungu ma res jesa longju namni jinli jungki ne debi 당보 진비 담제도 세대 우마 가서 지상本다와데 송고 다가지 롱슈에세디 제부디 규디 진발을 따와는 되는 용고래 되네서 상이 점년 디기 진바 따와를 되는 롱슈 용고 제부디니 용고 상기 현재네 대 당보 호랑리야 파진주게 냠는시 당보 진비 냠는 제고래 세 송고래 세 지상 진비 냠는 제고래 세 송고래 제 지상 롱주에 남네 진리 갈라 진리 중켄네 되비 당보 진비 담제도 사실 송고래
The practice of ethical restraint, whilst it includes not doing certain things physically or not speaking in certain ways, the practice is really mental. It's about training your mind. So the beginning stages is not to kill, not to lie, but it really is training your mind so that even the wish to harm others, physically or verbally, doesn't arise. And this is and ethics is the fundamental or the actual cause for a good rebirth, such as a human being. And therefore it's essential that it is cultivated. But being born as a human, whilst essential, is insufficient. One also requires a degree of mental abundance in order to be able to sustain one's life. And this also comes about independent on causes. And the causes for one's material wealth or material abundance or lack thereof is that of generosity. So the cultivating of a generous wish, a generous outlook, this is the cause that leads to material abundance in future lives. And here too, there's a quotation from Chandakirti's Entering the Middle Way, which states that because generosity is the cause for material abundance, it is presented as the first of the 6 perfections. Quotations something like that.
이상 저기 냠린지 탈바다 탐지 김비 고모토제 체델라 토모토나 개와 치매리아 땡델라 냠레 야고제 땡지 고고로와 제산다 둔주에 땡나 안에 냐와다 이다다 둔주에 땡라 나숭에 땡라 냠린지 해야 될까 하고 채고 제사 되네서 개와 치매이네 냠린지 땡 야고쇼다 제산 야고야기 땡디 고고로 제산디 땡디 주야라 추름 소야다 땡델라 밀리 토베네 땡델레 튠게다 강아데네 쇼네 야주 냠네 제 고브라고 말데네자 땡델레야 튠게데 강아메바 튠게 야보여야 되라 인다 진베 냠네 제야도 추진 냠네 제 데네 스베 냠네 제야다 왕보 차상 창와다 진네 소수기 네 시지데 덴바지 구용하야래야 네 스베 냠네 제고래 사지 데 냠네 제 데네 안에 준주 냠네 제데 안에 개와라 가신 조신 냠는지 되냐 좀 가신 조신 요 냠는지 제고래 제제반은 마음발아야는 직 되네기 땡들이야 냠는지에게 지금 가신 조신 용그레스 뒤에서 존주 냠는 고그레스 내내네 다 양아지 몰람 자고래 제대는 개와 사제네 마음반항이 되네기 제는全냠는지 고급다 라마 되네기 제지 되네야全냠는 고고 야보 라월쇼스비 몰람 자고래 몰람 지마메 바 삼자가지고 고그레스 제자데 되네자 추림송 저 진비 냠는지 쇠바곰 준주 좀 되네 몰람 지마메 바3 몰람 잡도 셔베나 네 개와 치마디네 ጤ야고 튠게나 차상 저되게 안 최제에게 되니 고급 여바 안 최제에게 안 되니 듬버 여바다 고급 자와의 용거리 튠게 창와의 용거리에서 이게 침보시 우리에서 돼 조언을 삼다에 조 지시고 지시 송거리와
The cultivation of ethics is important for many reasons, such as it being the foundation of all good qualities. But moreover, it is the primary cause that will lead to a good rebirth in our future lives. And this is important for everyone, no matter what your spiritual goals are. Because if one does not attain a good rebirth but falls into the lower realms, one's spiritual progression is severed. For example, a being reborn as an animal, how can they be spiritually guided? Their suffering is too overwhelming, their intelligence is far too limited. So it's indispensable for all of us that we ensure we accumulate abundant causes that will lead to a rebirth as a human being again. And moreover, though, merely born as a human, we know from what we observe in our world is insufficient. If one is impoverished, one cannot pursue a spiritual path because one is struggling to stay alive. So therefore, some degree of material abundance is required. And if one has ample material abundance, one can continue to help others as well as being, or in addition to not one having to struggle to stay alive, but can also focus on developing a spiritual path. So therefore, a second cause that must be cultivated is that of generosity, or a wish, the generous outlook, a wish to give. And the third cause for a good rebirth that must be cultivated is that of patience. And patience is a mind that stays undisturbed in the face of adversity. And this is the cause that leads to the result in future lives of having harmonious relationships with others, having a personality that is easily harmonious with others, as well as one's sense faculties being complete. So that's the third cause. The fourth is joyous perseverance. Joyous perseverance is a mind that delights in virtue, a mind that takes great pleasure, for example, in giving. Why joyous perseverance is so important is that being a mind that delights in virtue, in future lives, we will seek out a spiritual path. And when we find one, we'll readily want to engage in it. So this is the karmic result of cultivating a joyous perseverance. So these four causes, ethical restraint, generosity, patience, and joyous perseverance, we all must cultivate to ensure that life to life we continue to have good rebirths. And then one additional cause is that of stainless prayer. Because those four causes mentioned already will lead to a good rebirth as a human with excellent conditions to engage in spiritual practice. But then we need one additional cause on top of that, which is prayers, that from life to life we continue to meet our spiritual teacher and to be guided by them in the cultivation of the Mahayana paths. So this is the one additional cause to ensure that when we have a rebirth that is favorable for spiritual developments, that we continue to meet and come under the care of our spiritual teachers.
Nebigi Java J Risum Chosomata J Pembi Java J Ris Chosjaya Tang Kure Sem Duya de Sungurwa. The names are done to so Nanglo Samutana, and then one do see the Shimju Jevene Jigi Sosugi Samonalia, Shelia, Jigi Nubechegi, that Sewache, Samokumo Kuos about the Simja Soja Kuno Mena. And then Lunga get counts on the Duhas Yomarwad, Minduad. Lunga, some of the to send a Niku in the sum of Maho dead and the wood Lunga Kaya tribe and those work we get jumping the Duadua. The some of the Damaracorde, some of the DJ with some beginning, Chigalapaya, Jaya, Kambaja, Shed, Chicken, Chasa, some of the Gipa, Chicket. Chichen de Gala, then the Gangba Laba, Chazan Gujo, Daya La Sopa, Kitchen Signimata, Mara, La Sopa, then the Nigi, some no digi chigu, but that's not to say Burochi, how to add a Jigua. The names are Samba Sambuche or said the Yaramji Yasi Gidisunga, that chicken, Yamin Zoa did Samba Sambuche or said Shella, Jamba, that there was some Tangures, Shella, the Jamba, and Zivi, some not Nasha. Lunga is Michel and never chair some Sazan Gard war. She's not in it that Jugi Kumaku said, some number, some logic war, some recording each Tiku, the Jia was a bit some corner and the Jay war. 지금 막수게 되게 당부 미치게 삼는 코어 직제어 디제발 파지 좀또좀 제지 지제고 선배 삼는 공로하게 되네 아니 그런 게 마음을 막고 봐시 되는 맞지 맞아 직강하셔야지 제 진짜 되네 장도 삼로 되기 현이야 삼로 나타나요도네 지 삼로 대양시 현에 편발 강가도 지지현 누가 쓰고 되는 로지고 선배 삼로 코어도 류심 류가 진 자와진 현에 편비 자와 몽보도 집에는 지 강아 유스디와 봐 직단랑게 매샵 줘야다 된 로봇체도 배 먹고 통해도 just 공을 삼는 되는 예전에 체외 삼바다 녀바지야 삼는 메디게 현에 편바지야 삼는 메디게 다 삼는 되는 바마 되는데 이제 현에 녀바 지야시면 현에 편도야시야 좀 소소라는 게 내가 됐어 지는 고거 뒤에 지로 저 삼론나나 제가 삼론나나 라리고 그래지 되는 자다 경험지 양수순 거랑 삼바 상고 해야 돼 zemli nale milia semba sangbo chewa de be gechimbresha se de jamje de nyamne de shukcha tangko do se gechimbresha chezang ando zemli nale ya nyokra kanga mangbo shile de rikji nga zu mi ran syu do be ne ma chu nyokra de kanga de nga zu mi ge samlo ta chen ane de je samlo ta thang ngem be samlo ta na de de ne ma chu le go chezang ding nga zu mi ge syu ba za jamje sam ta be ne ma chu de ka tu gres ta chenja ri sue da ji 가소래 배 잘래 내가서 천절 뭐 세차상 하는 지 미게 삼는 땅타 돈을 쓰고래 제산 잠지게 삼는 냠는 제발나 뒤서 라미 세배 강아 망부지 마 매버서 두시디 주투그래 제산 잠 경험치기 야네 야도 쪼지 경험치기 지게 차례 쪼루지 점링 미들이야 아주 미바 지교래 제사 차산 대화고바 지교래 동아미도 지교래 이제 잠재념는 제고래 세대 손에도 쪼어지 냠는 쪼어지 난고래 세 차산이야 먹이지야다 염치 잘해 놔야 돼 쪼어지 난고도 와
The very meaning of Buddhist practice is to transform our mind. So when we hear in Buddhism about doing Buddhist practice or doing Buddhist training, it refers to transforming one's mind. And to be able to transform one's mind needs to first be prepared. And the way one's mind is prepared is that it is subdued, it is tamed, it becomes ethical. And that, to the extent that one's mind has been developed so that it's ethical, it is ready to be radically transformed. So the meaning of Buddhist practice is changing our mind. And changing our mind from following in the direction of the afflictions to becoming a mind that is exclusively focused on virtue. And the focus is on our mind, although we engage with others through our body and our speech. The focus in Buddhism is on our mind, because our body and our speech have no motivation of their own. They cannot act without being directed by the mind. To merely raise an arm, there has to be at some level the wish to raise the arm. To say something, to act in a certain way, depends on a motivating intent. So therefore, by taking control of your own mind, you take control of your body and your speech. You will no longer respond in an inappropriate manner or act in a way that you later regret. So we need to take responsibility for our own mind, subdue our own mind. And His Holiness, very often when he teaches, he emphasizes that the very heart of Buddhism is developing a kind heart. To the extent that one develops a kind heart, one will not harm others, but will actually only bring them benefit. And where we see the very opposite of this is how soldiers are trained. They are not trained to have a loving attitude towards their enemies. They are not trained to recognize their enemies as being just like them, wanting happiness and wanting to be freed of pain. No effective army could be trained like that. So when one takes control of one's mind, looking at really where are the causes of our suffering and the causes of our happiness, one will come to see that following the afflictions, never brings benefit in the long term. That, for example, taking advantage of others never brings benefit in the long term. And to the extent that one sees that, one will never deceive others. One will never try to take advantage of others for one's self-betterment, because one will know this will only lead to harm for oneself as well as others. His Holiness also often points out that the cause of our suffering on an individual and a societal level is the following of faulty ways of thinking, following our afflictions. This is what causes us as individuals to suffer and causes us as individuals to bring suffering into society. His Holiness often points out that the cause for warfare is the afflictions in leaders. The cause of the development of these weapons that cause such destruction are the afflictions in the mind of the populace who develop these weapons. The cause of the destruction of our environment, this too comes from following one's own self-interest. So following our own self-interest, having a self-centered attitude, His Holiness points out, this is the cause of all suffering. This is what needs to be abandoned.
And then, 지나다 가상다 디셰 딜리아 가상 디린셰 되는 거 조로 지금 저기 소수기 군노야 watch 고구레 세제 딜리아가 가르치시는 최셔바이나 최년바이나 군노야 watch 고구레세 디나시레 당저 가르는 군노 야가로 제나 군노야 watch 고구라 디네 자당은 저기 다쇼겐 조야랑이 갑라 나디린 다 지금이 류가 예수님과의 샬리아 네비게 자와서 있는 지금이야 선배 삼는다 다데네 셴리에 팬비게 자와데 강투도 지인 선배게 삼다데 예시시 식차고래 디 삼다베는 아주 삼는데 기회죠 아니 내도스네 차고로와 안디네 자다 팬비 자와 지인스도 다 아주 류가 예수님 셴리에 팬비게 자와 강투도 지인 선배 삼다네 데네게 도시 안에 야도 땅에 땅와야 돼 아주게 다디 님의 제베나 근데 지금 람상은 주 삼다지 주와 저 람사데 람 야고 차리가 깔려버리네 이게 등이 진짜 저 야기 주로와 저디 갈래 충충 야기 줘봐도 가서 야기 줘와 하고 말와 제 갈래 오스라 차나 하고도 그러와 진짜 니네 자도 진짜 삼당에 등에 제베나 가지고 야기 줘야 봐 진짜 니네 자다 니네게 제 니네 가지고 샬리아 소수기 rob shanlia pemba dubi sembe samdaare and dinege samdane dini yaji shen de kangada dini kar thubine shen ye sosole nyoba chibna pa khoro langche khoro langme shanlia khoro mala che di chablia pembe jawa da shanlia jambe samle kituba jigin sembe samdaada da sube yamna charugurwa and dini zada sosuge de gewe shanlia pembe jawa dubiadang dinege anjige 두야딜베 야구레 스팅이 무튜니 냠는 제도가 지긴 선배게 삼다디 자바나 존주의 차용으로 제가 되네 지나는 하는 주에 니게티나 당에 게티네 무튜체 되네게 냠내 야구 제도가 쇼 선배 삼다다 아니 팬배 자와 제도야다 되네게 안지 게디네 지게 개위 초 냠는 잠제 냠는 제도가 용어 쇼 선배 삼다만 잡아이나 나딩한 주게 니 두신 제반에 개와디 셈 규획이 두신에 삼는나 야가도 차고로 진짜 아주 최인념을 셈 규획 도는 식으로 진짜 니네 삼다면 셈 두제 차지 니 삼숨숨전에 마삼신데 꼭 장도를 맞아 친디들 고 야야야 두고로 와다 니네 삼당고에데 곰곰세데 삼노두 신의 곰지 곰지제데 지치고로 와데 디 공고에데 개체모 차고로 와다가도 가산다 드린 걸 없어 지나는데 되는 마다 최시류 갑라 간이시 군농 간스고래 냠비 갑라 군농 간스고래 세다 다 최시간 기행들이야 최시를 마서는 되는 고고래 세 디고 쉬어라 와다가 쉬어야 다 되는 인자도 쉬어라 양안 중에 삼문당당들이야 두신의 장샤바에 나가 줄래 판도 쉬어가 직 자고로 와
This weekend the emphasis once again has been on the need to cultivate and be guided by a wholesome motivation. So the emphasis on one's mind is what, the topic that's emphasized in every Buddhist teaching, taking control of one's own mind, transforming one's own mind. So here I encourage you that every day, every morning, to establish your motivation for the day. Establish a motivation of, today I will not harm others. I will take control of my mind and I will ensure it doesn't go in the direction of wanting to bring harm to others. And when it does, I'll withdraw my mind from that way of thinking and I'll turn it in the opposite direction of thinking, how best can I help others? So generate that motivation every day. Do so first thing in the morning and record it repeatedly throughout the day to keep it fresh. And take the various information, the knowledge you've gained from various teachings and add it into this cultivation of this motivation. And then, by doing this repeatedly over a sustained period, change will definitely come. Because this process of change may not fulfill our impatient desires of wanting to change immediately. We're needing to change deep-seated, habituated self-interest. To turn this around takes constant effort over a sustained period. But you can be confident that if you do cultivate a motivation like this every day, you'll sustain this motivation ever more. And it will start perhaps to become evident to yourself after a while, but it'll certainly become evident to those around you, perhaps even before to yourself. They'll recognize that you're not responding to frustrations and difficulties in one's life in the same way that you used to. They'll see this change in you. They'll see that you're becoming more consistent, more even in how you interact with others. So others will recognize this within you, perhaps even more quickly than you recognize it in yourself. So within this cultivation of your motivation for the day of today I will not harm, I'll only benefit others as much as I can. Within that, also set the determination, I will not respond to anger to others or frustration in what I encounter in my daily life. And here you can think about what you know you can likely expect from your day ahead, who you may meet or what situations you may find yourself in. And recognize that in these situations, I'm likely to get angry, I'm likely to get annoyed. Set the determination and remind yourself of it before you go into that meeting or that situation, that I'll take care of my mind. I will not allow the afflictions to rule. I will respond with wisdom, with kindness, with compassion. And in this way, you practice patience, taking control of your own mind, recognizing that it's your own afflictions that cause you suffering, not what others do towards you, or what other situations may lead to. It's only your own mind that causes your suffering. And thereby, one creates the space within oneself to fulfill the other part of your motivation. I will benefit others. No matter how they interact with me, I will be skillful and act in a way that is beneficial. So this is the motivation I encourage you to cultivate every day. Take all the teachings you've heard, bring it into this. But it comes down to this commitment not to follow the afflictions, but to rather keep the mind virtuous. And as long as you do this repeatedly over a sustained period, both in a formal set of meditation, but what's equally crucial is to remind yourself of that again and again throughout the day. If you do this, your mind will change. Because meditation has as a synonym habituation or familiarization. This is the need to engage in these topics repeatedly over a sustained period, because what we're trying to do is both break harmful habitual patterns and create and strengthen new, virtuous, wholesome habitual patterns. This is the process of meditation. And thereby, engaging in this again and again, change will come. So this weekend, we looked at the motivation that someone receiving teachings needs to cultivate, the motivation that someone giving the teachings needs to cultivate. So this shows the emphasis, the importance of motivation. So I encourage you to develop a wholesome motivation and have that guide your life. Okay, thank you very much. Then we'll conclude there for this weekend. Thank you.